right, y'all. I think we got it together. Welcome to ENC Question Reflection, where you learn truth, knowledge, and understanding, and sometimes just random conversations. Look, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Make sure that you hit the notification bell and select all so you don't miss any material. Also, make sure that you like, comment, and share this video with family, friends, or whoever can benefit or you feel like can benefit from it. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Today, we're going to be talking about DNA being mandatory. So that's a rather, I'm not going to say controversial topic, but sometimes it can be leaning towards maybe a controversial topic. So we're going to talk about it today. So let's go ahead and get everybody situated. Things seem a little weird today to me, if you ask me. They seem weird. And y'all, we also don't want to just have this conversation, like just generically answer this conversation, either like yes, no, maybe. We really want to talk about it. We really want to have an actual conversation about it. We really want to be having an actual conversation. Not, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. Let's talk about it. Let's actually go into detail about it. Also, just to remind everybody, if you do want to get in on the stream, if you do have something that you want to verbally say rather than just type it, let me know so I can send you the link to the StreamYard. That way you'll be able to get in on the StreamYard as well, instead of just, texting things. So like I said, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit YouTube, go to YouTube and subscribe to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about DNA testing being mandatory at birth. I would love to hear what everyone else has to say about that. It can be a really hard topic, especially when you're dealing with different people who are going through different things. When it comes to the DNA plays a very big role in us as humans. So whether you needed to be tested at birth. Now, testing DNA at birth, I would say mostly goes towards paternal testing, which would be like testing fathers. But I think that it actually can play a larger role as well. I think that DNA testing, because there's so much into DNA, that it can go much further past the fact of just testing a father. There are pros and there's cons to testing DNA in the beginning. Now, I'm not a biologist nor a scientist, so I don't know that much about the DNA itself. But I mean, I did kind of think about it today and think about what could and couldn't be going on with it and what pros and cons can come out of it. So I know that a lot of people really want to, a lot of people really been thinking about that. I know that it's been something that's been talked about before. So a pro to DNA testing can definitely be, it does help to determine a father. If a father is and I know that we run into that a lot in the world of children, in the world of fathers and kids, and that daddy doesn't know who his children are, the child doesn't know who his father is, or the mom doesn't even know who the father is, whatever the situation is. The only concern that I really, really think, or the main concern I really think about when I think about testing a child at birth is, let's say a mom does not know who could possibly be the father. Let's say she's been pregnant and ain't no man been in her life, the entire time. So you test at birth, but who do you test against? Who do you compare it with? Do you just put it in the system? Do you just leave it as is? What exactly do you do with it? You want them to be tested at birth. If they have someone to test against, I mean, maybe. But if there's nobody, if a woman has been through her pregnancy and you get to the hospital, she has the baby, you take their blood or swab them or however you want to do it, and there's nobody to compare the DNA to. You might be able to say, yeah, that's their mom, but I mean, that was obvious. But what about the father? What about the father? Who do you test them against? Hey, Denise, how you doing? Long time no see. So I think that would pose an issue, because the whole idea of a lot of people saying, well, a baby needs to be tested when they're born is primarily for that purpose. We want to get the DNA while we're there. But the thing is, it's the father who you're looking for. If it's the father you're looking for and they're not there, how are you going to test? You can pull their blood all you want to. But, so I don't really quite understand. I understand the purpose of it, but if you don't have somebody to test it against, what's the point of testing it at all until that time comes? Hey, Vanessa, how are you? If y'all want to chime in, you can. Just make sure, just hit I think it's a request button, and I'll put it in. I'll tap it. So it's kind of questionable to whether it's beneficial. It's a great idea, but is it really feasible? Does it really make sense? Is it actually more trouble than it's worth? Good, hanging in there, can't complain. Same stuff, different day. Same stuff, different day. So, when it comes to that, I don't know. Now let's take it a whole nother level. You have, let's say a woman, she's married. She has a baby. She's in the hospital. They want to do a DNA test. Her husband's sitting there, Let's say the baby's not his. I mean, that DNA would say, okay, the baby's not his, but he still has the legal responsibility. I don't care what you sign, because when a husband and a wife are married, any baby that she has while they're married is his. So unless they plan on getting a divorce, I mean, then maybe that would make sense. But hold on, Doreen. That just really doesn't make much sense to me, because and then of course you have, if you tested somebody just to be testing them, where are you gonna store those DNA? Where are you gonna store that at? Where are you gonna store it at? Where are you going to? I don't know. I just think that if every baby is tested at birth, you're going to run into a situation where there's no fathers there to be tested in. And so then you're just going to end up storing the DNA. Now it doesn't take a lot of space to store one DNA test, because it comes in this little, when my babies were born, we have it in the freezer. and it's in case they ever get kidnapped. So it's a really small, thin thing. I mean, it's flat as can be, but you're talking about millions of people doing this too. Now, I could understand when they said, should we drug test people that want to go in government assistance? Now, yeah, I mean, we can have a conversation about that. But as far as DNA testing a baby, I don't know. I like the idea itself, but it's really the father's DNA that so many women are searching for. The baby's right there. It's not like it. That's the missing key. It's the father that's missing. So, and with married couples, I don't know how that makes much sense. Let me Hey Doran, welcome to REC.
Hello, how you doing? Yeah, you brought up a lot of good points. I had a DNA situation. Yeah, I'm on here. I can see you. I can see you and hear you.
I can't hear you. Hold on.
You can't hear me? Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah. I can hear you.
Let me see. I gotta make sure I can hear you though.
I'm gonna just keep talking and just chime in, but yeah, I don't think it should be mandatory, but for certain families, it does come in handy. Because I had a situation to where I took a test, a DNA test, and the girl was 1 year old already. So I took a DNA test and it came out positive. I was the father. But then later on, she took a blood test with her fiance and it found out he was a dad. So I thought I was a dad for like 2-3 months. And we weren't a couple.
Everybody can hear me though, right?
Yeah, I can hear you too.
Doran, I can't hear you at all.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Is your microphone on? Is your microphone on?
Yeah, everything's working. Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so they can hear me. So I don't know why I can't hear you.
I'm sure they can hear me too. Yeah.
Oh, you can hear him? Okay.
See?
Hold on. My husband says he can hear everybody.
That's cool.
So it's got to be me.
He heard a good story.
Object of elimination.
Yeah, you guys heard the story. Yeah.
I tell you how to
I thought I was
that.
a dad for 2 months. This was like 6-7 years ago, and I thought I was a father. Turns out I wasn't.
Y'all can't hear. That's the crazy thing.
For 2-3 months, I was giving this girl money. I was, coming by, checking on the kid. I had pictures of the kid. I had my Facebook post with the kid. I was saying I had a daughter, and then come to find out I didn't. So that was real hard on me. Now, thankfully, a couple years later, I have 2 kids now, so I was blessed eventually. But yeah, I'm 35 years old.
Because I don't know what he's talking about.
Thinking I had a father. Thinking I had a kid, thinking I was a father.
There. Fixed.
So yeah, DNA testing is important, but it shouldn't be mandatory. It's up to you. Yeah. Okay, it's time to eat. Okay. Yeah, but I was just coming on for a few minutes.
Huh?
I was just coming on for a few minutes.
I can't hear him, Eric.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I'm going to get off, but I just want to share that quick story. But the answer is there should not be mandatory testing. But at the same time, it is good if people want to do it. Only a certain few people want to do that. But most people wouldn't want their DNA out there. So I agree with you. It shouldn't be mandatory. But yeah, guys, I'm out. But I appreciate you watching. And This is a great show, so keep it locked in. Peace out, y'all.
Okay, so I don't know why I couldn't hear that. Testing is right. There's a lot of guys who got kids and they really don't know the truth, and they spend most of their lives thinking that they actually have one. I'm reading this out loud because we're also live on YouTube, so YouTubers can hear it too. Okay, so Wilfred says, I think you're right. DNA testing is right. There are a lot of guys who got kids and they really don't know the truth, and they spend most of their lives thinking that they actually have one when they actually don't. You know, there was a guy who raised a child until they were 18 years old and then found out that it wasn't his baby. And I think there was another one like that on, what's the show? Mathis, Judge Mathis. And that's really sad. But you know what? He formed a relationship with his daughter. And I think that's fantastic that he was able to keep the relationship, because these guys build relationships with women, and then they build relationships with the women. They build relationships with the child. As the child gets older, DNA couldn't make them closer, you know, and a lot of them say stuff like that. So the oddball kind of thing is that so a lot of men really want to be in a child's life. They really want to, they don't really care if the child's biologically theirs or not. You know, it's all about raising the kid. Jenny says, no, not mandatory. I agree with Doran. I didn't get to hear Doran. I'm totally going to have to go back and watch that. I'm so upset because I don't know why I can't hear. I heard him last time. So I'm kind of mad about that. But it was I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. But let me see. So definitely a great tool, and will be desired to be had many, but not mandatory. Invasion of privacy if not wanted. Invasion of privacy is a reach. It wouldn't be I don't think it would be invasion of privacy. Because really, you can get DNA from anything. I can put this in my mouth and get DNA off of it. I think it's not that it's mandatory that I think that it's an issue. I think that I think it would the most issue would be is it's redundant. It doesn't make any sense. It's like let's say we make it mandatory. Then you go in here and you have all these little babies. Do you know how many babies are born a year? Let's look that statistic up, since you know I love statistics and all. How many babies are born in a year? Just in a year. I should have said in a day. 4 million babies are born in the United States. Now, that's just the United States. We only talk about United States. Each year, that's 4 million babies. So you're talking about if you make it mandatory, 4 million DNA tests. Now, on the other side of it, it would be great for a lot of these parents, a lot of these guys that are having these babies, and they don't know if that child belongs to them, you know. But then again, it goes back to, well, how do you give somebody you don't know if they have legal responsibility to that child? How do you even give them access to their DNA? It's just, I think it's a lot of really legalities that go into making something like this mandatory. So I wouldn't even say not even the privacy thing, Jenny, not even that. More or less, where are you going to store that, for one? For two, where are you? I mean, you probably put it in a system. Okay, great. But I mean, maybe that would be great. Maybe in 20 years after they're born and they commit a crime, you already have their DNA. I mean, okay, I get that. But when this topic came up, this had nothing to do with DNA on criminals. This had everything to do with men, paternal tests for fathers. So paternity test, not even just DNA testing, but paternity testing. So, and then it goes back to before I was having so many little issues in this, trying to figure this thing out. Marital couples, whenever a married couple has a baby, that legal responsibility goes on that husband instantly. There is no, well, the baby's father, has legal rights to the, the only way you'll be able to fight that is if they get divorced. And then, okay, there you go, your little paternity test, and I get that. But there's just so much. There's just so many little things. And on top of that, DNA testing is costly. I remember they used to say it costs $500 for a DNA test. So who's going to pay for that? Does that come, every time I have a baby, I have to pay $500 for a DNA test? They cut off circumcision because it just didn't make any sense. So, I'm really fighting to understand how a mandatory DNA test would make sense, or not even make sense, but what's the word I'm looking for? How would it benefit us enough to where it has to be mandatory? Now, I will tell you something I do agree on, that DNA testing is not an option. It's not an option when you have a baby. I think they should make the option or the opportunity mandatory. Like, I think that the hospital should say, hey, do you want to have a paternity test? Yes or no? Then, they have that can be taken care of in the beginning. They can waive their rights to have their whatever, they can waive that option if they want to, or they can decline that option. That I could understand that I could totally understand that. But I think that it would be too costly to make DNA testing mandatory. Jenny says, that's what I was thinking, paternity, unless there is a question or doubt. I believe it's an invasion of privacy. And I can see that. I know that they won't fight that. They won't fight it would be something else. But yeah, I can definitely see where invasion of privacy, because some girls don't want other people to know that ain't their baby daddy. They just don't. And yes, and the availability should be an option. They come into you. So I had 3 cesarean sections because my first son, my oldest, decided he wanted to be rough and tough and put me through 23 hours of labor and ended up with an emergency C-section. So I never got to have natural birth. So they come in with this stack of papers, and stacks to sign. And so you're sitting in there and you're filling out all these papers, and oh my gosh, you have to make sure whenever you have a baby, make sure the birth certificate looks right. Make sure, because these people will mess up everything. They will mess up anything and everything on their birth certificate. But they come in here with all these papers, and then if one of those papers said, hey, do you want your child's DNA to go in the system? Do you want to have a DNA test on your child? It would be a maternity test for you and the child and the mom, but a DNA test, yeah, the availability should be mandatory. That I can agree with. The option should be a mandatory question, because they'll go through these, they'll be like, okay, I have to ask you this, because it has like this little red star next to it. I have to ask you this, and forgive me, do you want a DNA test? Because they say it anything else. Girls, whenever we go to the hospital, they always apologize for asking, when was your last menstrual cycle? They always say that. They're always like, just saying, And so if they can ask those kind of questions, I'm sorry to have to ask you this. Do you want a DNA test? Do you want, you want a maternity test with your child? And I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. And of course, it would give you the option to say, no, I don't, or, you know what, I accept those charges or something. But when it comes to making it mandatory without even asking, just kind of like, okay, I'm taking your baby as soon as the baby comes and I'm going to take some of their blood, you know, it doesn't just become an invasion of privacy either. It becomes costly. It becomes a charge that you didn't sign up for. Anytime you go to the doctor, they're like, okay, I got to charge you for every pill I give you, every cc of whatever I give you. I have to charge you for every bag of saline I give you. You know, they're over here like, they itemize everything in a hospital. Every time you go, itemize it. What's this big old bill for? Well, you took 2 feet off the step and we had to catch you. That's what they do. They itemize everything. And so when it comes to DNA, you know, DNA testing or having that ability, then you're like, do I have to pay for this? You know, especially when it's mandatory, and especially when you get some people who don't agree with it. You'll get some people be like, I don't want my baby tested. That's so disrespectful. Like, why would you? And you'll get people like that because me, I'm a married woman. So for me to go to the hospital and have a baby, which that's never going to happen again because, you know, but if it did, and they asked me that question, I would be like, excuse me? You have to mandatorily test my, I wouldn't care because my husband's, my kids kept having, I don't care. But being forced to do it, you know, there's a lot of women that aren't nice about it and they'll snap off. They may very well be hiding something. You may be exposing secrets they don't want nobody to hear about. My husband says, I think all men should get a DNA test so there are no doubts. That's coming from a man. And see, the men are the ones who are actually being affected the most by lack of paternity tests. A lot of kids are being thrown on men that are not theirs. A lot of men are being I'll tell you a story that really sucks for men. Bryant Sports says, yeah, they do that with everything. They do. I'm gonna tell you a story. So there was a lady. She knew who the father of her child is. She knew. Anybody who knows about child support, they know that they always do a paternity test when you're going to start doing child support. They take those funds and the state pays for those funds. So it's not really a big deal of who's going to pay for it because you never have to pay for it out of pocket. So when they start the child support things, that's what they do. So there was a woman. She knew who the father of her children were. So her children got well, I'm gonna start with the boy because he was the oldest. He was the one that started it. He got about 5 years old, and all of a sudden, she's going through it. She's struggling or whatever it is. She wanted to put this man on child support. So the paternity test wasn't done or anything like that. So they had to do the paternity test, and guess what? That man had to pay all of those years for 5 years back in child support. Now, had that option been available in the beginning, that could have all been squashed. And I also disagree with this has nothing. Well, it has something to do with the topic, but not really. It's probably a whole other topic. I also disagree with women being able to start child support, like you get to retro pay all this child's child support. I disagree with that for a few reasons, and we can probably do another live on that one. But I don't necessarily think that that's fair. Not even that it's not right. It's just I don't too much like that. I don't think that's fair. So I'm going to ask this: what problems could testing DNA at birth? What problems could it create? So I think we've discussed a couple of them, but I know one is you'll end up with DNA, with that DNA having to be stored. Like I told you, Whenever my children were born, they gave us this little packet. It was like, it looked like a little envelope, and it had their DNA in it. So a lot of DNA is stored on like hard drives and devices to where they can, kind of go back to it, and here's the results. But here's the problem I see with that. If I don't know if y'all watch ID channel or like any of these investigation discovery channels, like for the crime, stuff like that. But if you ever notice, they take DNA from cases and they store it. And then that way, years later, after the crime and has taken place, and DNA has evolved, or it has progressed, and it has gotten better. You ever notice that, all of a sudden they found the killer 20 years later because DNA has gotten so much better. So I just don't see them putting DNA results that they take now, putting them in the computer and saying, that's the results, period. They're going to want to store them. And if they want to store them, that's going to take up space, which is going to be costly. I don't know. I really think that this is just it's going to cost more than it's actually worth. If that makes any sense. It's going to cost more than it's worth. It's not worth the amount of money that they'll end up putting into it, because when you're talking about making it mandatory, you're talking about making it mandatory for every single person, because you can't discriminate. Think about that. Jaden, set la puerta para you're talking about every child. You can't discriminate. You can't be like, okay, well, all of the white children that is born in Texas is going to get tested, and all of the Hispanic children, you can only get tested if your mom's mixed with something. You can't do that. You can't put them kinds of stipulations on testing. What you want? What you want? Go in now. These are my 2 grandchildren from my adopted daughter that I love so much dearly. Go in there. Huh? Do what now? Okay, I'm gonna get them to go do what they asked you to do, please.
Ask me.
Can you go get some?
You gotta say please.
You better watch your attitude. So, all right, Aaron says. Gavin says my mom does. Aaron says a lot of men are raising kids they thought was there, just to find out years later the child is not his. It's true. It's true. But see, what that goes to is that goes towards what I was saying in the beginning. It's not the kids that are missing from the equation. It's the fathers that are missing from the equation. So you put this DNA up, you'll store it, whatever. You still got to find a father to compare it to. You still have to be like, well, I got 2 and a possible. It's like, well, how many do you have for us to compare? Oh, okay, I got 3 that are possibilities. That's what's missing is the father. So these men are raising kids that don't belong to them. I think that question, I don't know anything about this from this. Oh, you want some crime shows. So you know what I mean? You know what I mean when I say that DNA evolves, it progresses. So I said, there's all these men that are, that are not, they don't know if the kid's there. So the same thing with, let's say a woman he knows that she's pregnant, and he has, and he knows that he slept with her, Idarian Lelus. So let's say that he knows that he slept with her. he knows that she can say what she wants, but the baby inside of her is possibly hers. You know, taken that he knows that she's actually pregnant, because a lot of women don't actually tell the men that they're having a baby or they're expecting a baby. So let's ask them. Let's say that same question that the woman was asked that we say should be mandatory, which is, do you consent to a DNA test? Would you like a DNA test for this baby? Would you like your child's DNA to go on record? Blah, blah, blah. I think that those men who come in and say, that woman just had a baby, I want my DNA compared to it. I think that those men should have that right. Maybe I wouldn't say, well, you know, they may have to pay, they're not going to pay $500 because they're not testing, because when they do child support testing, they test the mom and the child and the father. So it's not just, there's 3 packages to that. There's the child, there's the mother and the father. They test all that DNA whenever they do child support. So the price shouldn't be as high when a woman has a baby, because you're only testing, the woman already got hers and the baby's in there. But that father, that person who thinks the child may be his, I think he should also have the right to say, hey, I want my DNA tested against that. I would like to know. And, you know, that way you don't run into 5 years down the line, that woman comes up to you, oh, well, you know what, you're a possibility. I told you that in the beginning. There you got a little fusion. And then what really sucks is when that woman finds out that is his baby, he's got to pay all those years, however old that child is, he has to pay all those years back in child support. It ain't like it just starts there, you know, where he knew that was his baby and then it just goes up. He has to go all the way back. And if that child if he has to pay $200 a month times 12, you know, you're looking at what is that? $2,400? No, what is that? My mind's not working today. 200 times 20, yeah, $2,400. See what I'm talking about? Overthinking. You're talking about $2,400. Now take that. Let's say the child's 5. Take that times 5. You know, and then you're running into this man started out what is that? $13,000 debt already. Like, he doesn't even get a chance to be like, hey, I want to, you know, I'm going to be without debt. I'm not going to have any debt, you know, for this child. You know, I get to start out on a clean slate. No, he has to automatically start it. I'm going to tell you, let's say the kid's 5, $12,000. Boom. He owes, instead of $200 a month up front, okay, well, your payment starts at is $12,000. You owe $12,000 because this child is 5. And I think that's ridiculous. Jenny says, I agree with Eric, but I think the availability or option should definitely be mandatory. I don't think the DNA test itself should be mandatory, because there are a lot of couples out there that are aware. Exactly. They're already aware. They already know who their child's father is, but you have to consider this too. There's a lot of women that say, oh, I know who my baby daddy is. And they be so wrong. Because one thing that, and this is going to hurt a lot of women's feelings, and I love you and I'm sorry. Women are receivers. So they'll be like, oh, my baby looks just like my baby daddy. Well, what we don't understand is, see, women are receivers. So therefore, whoever a woman sleeps with, we keep that DNA. So if you're sleeping with 5 different men, you have 5 different DNAs in you. Once that happens, you might have a child that looks like that man you slept with, but DNA says it's this man's child. And you might be like, well, wait a minute, what? Now look at you. Now look at you. Now you done started some stuff, because you got a man out here who's got a 5-year-old, he's got a big old debt for. So I really think that a man should have that option. And I mean, I understand if he might have to pay $500, he ain't gonna pay that. You know, maybe he pays, you know, $50, you know. Yeah, I'll pay it if I'd pay $50 a day than $12,000 a day. I wouldn't want to be in a hole instantly like that. Yeah, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. And I don't think that's right that they do men like that. Yeah, Brian Sports says, yeah, he has to pay all that back, but $200 a month, not much. I'm just giving a number. But still, I don't do child support. My husband's not on child support, so forgive me, but I don't know much about how much child support costs. But still, I can see how someone in that financial situation will look at it, although I disagree and they should easily pay it. Think about that, though. Think about that. So legally, I know how it works. Understanding how much each one's paid, I don't get all that. But legally, understand. So look, check this out. If a man, I'm going to use the numbers I was using. Let's say he does pay $200 a month, because there are some kids, if they're older, like the younger they are, it's almost like the more they cost. But the older they are, the less amount that they're going to cost a month for some reason. It's like daycare, but whatever. If that child's 5 or 7 or whatever, and you find out that child is now yours, that state's going to say, okay, well, $200, you owe that for 5 years. So here you're stuck with $12,000. This is where it sucks for men. They might want to easily pay that. There's a lot of men, they're not in situations to easily drop $12,000 out of their pocket. And the majority of men are not in a position in a position to drop it like that. They're just not. That's the reality of it. They're not in a position to do that. And so what you'll end up with is you'll end up with a man who can't pay for it. He may try to start paying for it, but let's say he can't get caught up. Then you start getting bench warrants. You start getting what are them things called, purges. You start getting your license suspended. You start doing all kinds of crazy things. And I know this because it happened to my dad. For me, and I'm 36 years old. I don't care about you. You can't do anything. What can you do for me? What can your money do for me? What can your child support do for me? I was raised by the state of Missouri. Like, how can your child support help me? But see, they took his license. My dad, I was going to say my husband. My dad, he owned his own. It was like he used to build houses and do all that stuff. So he used to have to drive his truck. You take his license, he can't drive. Then you start taking all kind of other stuff from him, and and then on top of that, he's owing this, and then you threaten to put him. You can put men in jail, and then they got to pay this, and then when them purges hit, you ain't paying enough, and then purges hit. Guess what? It ain't $200 a month they're gonna ask you for. They're gonna ask you for about $1,500, $1,600, or you gonna go to jail.
Gigi,
Yes, my love.
the remote.
Why is your hair looking like this? What?
The remote is not working.
Okay, go tell Jaden to help you. Okay, I love you.
Gigi,
Yes, baby.
okay.
This is He-Man. I don't know what that is. And this is a robot. And this is Black Panther.
No. Yeah.
Yep. All right, go on now. Go on. Brian Sports says, I'm already talking about the 12,000. Look, you might be in a position to do that, but there's a lot of men that are not out here. They're not in a position. And let's flip it, because it's a lot of women that are in the same situation, because a lot of people are, well, women can't be on child support. Yes, they can. It might not be it might not be the situation where they don't know who their baby daddy is. Any woman knows if the child belongs to them. It came out of them. But you'll have women who they can't take care of their kids, don't want to take care of their kids, or just want their kids to go with their father. So their father's like, look, either you're going to do timeshare and do what you're supposed to be doing, or you're going to be on child support too. So it's women in that position too. And then women go through the same thing. Not as many. The number is a lot lower than it is for men that are having to go through that. But you deal with that. You deal with people who are not in a position to be able to pay that much money. And so DNA being mandatory in the beginning, it may help. It's not going to help a woman, because any woman knows what baby came out of her. That's the given. I'm going to tell you, trust me, we know what baby came out of us. It's men that really are with the paternity test, because you don't know if a child belongs to you. But the only way I can really see this benefiting is if it can help that man from having to be put in such a large number of for debt. I don't like that. I don't care if you can pay $200, $300, $400 a month for a child. I don't think it's right to put debt on somebody like that instantly. It's like that's like saying I'm gonna make you pay all this debt you didn't even know you had, and then I'm gonna give you a bunch of consequences when you don't pay it because that's what it is. Yes. Eric says, my husband says that if you want to support our channel and feel free to donate, you can definitely do that. It's appreciated. You don't have to, but if you want to support the channel, it's definitely something that we do appreciate. You can do that on Cash App, $ENC ? Or you can also use PayPal if you feel a little bit better doing that. It's paypal.me/ENC ? Darian, what from? So it is both parents' place to pay it if they aren't raising you. So it is both parents' place to pay it if they aren't raising you. I agree that. I totally agree with that. So, like I was just telling you about my dad. My dad actually has this going on with him. I was actually in the state of Missouri. I was always in the state of Missouri's custody. And I agree with that. I totally agree with that. That both parents, if your child is being raised in foster care or something like that, that not one parent should just be like, oh, well, you owe this. You owe this because you're the father and nobody else had. I think it should be split. And honestly, I would love to know where it's coming from because I don't ever remember being on child support. But hey, I'm just the child. But I know my daddy knows that I'm his. I mean, oh yeah, you haven't seen my dad before. He looks like Charles Bronson. Look, that's what that is. He looks like Charles Bronson. Period. So look, I think that mandatory DNA testing is going to cause more of a problem that people are really ready for. Like we were talking about before, it definitely should be a question that is asked when a child is born. I don't think that it should just be something like, okay, let me have your baby so I can go take some of their DNA. It shouldn't be something they're forced to do. It should definitely be something that they're asked, do they want to do? Do you want to do this? Do you want to have your baby's DNA put in the, and it can be a good idea. I know they put our baby's DNA in that little packet. I don't know if they put it in the system though, but they did put it in a packet. And in case our kids ever got like kidnapped or anything like that, then they would have something. My auntie says I really look like her. I agree. Why do you keep walking back here? Hold on. Go in there. Because you make me think that you want something, and I'm going to stop for you because you're a priority. We adopted a girl when she was, because I don't have any girls, and those are her children, and those are my little precious, my Gigi babies. And then I find out later Gigi stands for great grandma. Ain't no great grandma, nothing. I thought that was just supposed to be the cool grandma, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, look, so I don't know. I think that making DNA mandatory is actually going to cause more problems than making it an option. Like I said in the beginning, one of the cons to DNA testing is that married people, it doesn't matter whether you are biologically someone's or not. Whenever you're married, any child that your wife has while you are married is a man's legal responsibility. Period. And I know that they've said, well, what if you want the father's name on the birth certificate? In order to do that, if you don't want your husband's name on a child's birth certificate, you're going to have to get a couple affidavits. You're going to have to go through paternity testing anyways, because they're not going to change. If you are married, they are not going to change that child off of your birth certificate until there's a paternity test. So there's a paternity test going to be done anyways. That's a requirement. So that has to be taken into consideration. But imagine how many people are already married. You got so many people that are already in a married relationship, and they might cheat on their husband and have a baby outside of wedlock. Well, not outside of the wedlock, but, outside of their marriage. And then they go and they have the baby, and, now what are you going to do? Because that's going to be mandatory anyways, because that father is that's his legal responsibility, whether a woman likes it or not. That's her husband's child, period. And the only way you're gonna get that off that birth certificate is they have to sign an affidavit, and they have to do a DNA test. Answer this for me. Okay. Do you think it's the right of a mother can put any last name on the birth certificate? No. So she asked, for those that are, y'all can't see that one. It says, answer this. Do you think it's the right of the mother to be able to put the any last name she wants on the birth certificate? So if she's, so in a marriage situation, if you're married, they're automatically going to that's going to be the husband's that's going to be his decision. He's going to be able, you don't have to crawl, baby. Just go over there. The woman, that's going to cause problems in the household. So she's normally probably going to be like, no, well, I'll just give her my husband's last name, because that child is legally his responsibility. Anytime a woman is married, if anybody gets put on child support, paternity or not, biological or not, it doesn't matter. It's gonna be the father. It's gonna be the husband's legal responsibility to take care of that child on a monetary level. So that husband is going to want to. They're going to want to put their name on that child, because I'm taking care of you. You're mine. You might not be biologically mine, but I'm about to be raising you for the next however many years. 18, 24 for some kids. So now when you have somebody that's just your boyfriend, I mean, a lot of moms are just resorting to giving their child their own last name. But have you ever noticed that men want boys more than girls? Have you ever wondered why? It's because a man's name will spread with a boy. Because when you get married, you take your husband's last name. So there your name spreads. With a girl, she's going to take her husband's last name. So her last name stops right there. So men like boys. So whenever they have kids, they want their child to have that last name so their name can be carried. So their last name doesn't just stop. But if you're not, you can, anyone's on there. I'll put anyone's on there. But if you're not, you can put anyone. Yeah, you can. Paris and Melania used to be girlfriend. You can. You literally can. You can, but when it comes to the husband, I'll tell you like this. If you don't fill that out, if you don't fill that part out about the child's name, they're automatically going to give you your child's. They're going to give you the woman's last name to the child. If you don't fill that out and you leave their last name blank, they're going to give that woman that their mom is going to be, that's the last name. You're going to have to go. You're going to have to go have it changed. Sure enough, will. But you can. If a woman sits right there and she's filling that paperwork out and she puts her husband's last name is Smith and the baby daddy's last name is I don't know, what's another last name? Jones. And her husband's last name is going to go on there as Smith. But if that's just another, boyfriend and it's the baby daddy, she can put whoever she wants on there. You're right. It's not right without a DNA. And I'm going to tell you what happened. True story. A woman did that. She went and put a child, some other man that she liked. She had the baby while she was dating him. She put his last name on there, even though she knew that wasn't his baby. Okay. Later on, she started dating somebody else. She found out that this other man was actually the baby's true father. And she started dating him. She had to go through, actually, you know what? She did it twice. Yep, she did it twice. And if a child is under the age, I think it's 7, you can change the child's name for free. I think it's under the age of 7. I will double check that, but I think it's under the age of 7. Brian Sports says, yeah, it may be time for people to notice that, time for people to pay attention to that. The time is now. True statement. But in general, people who are not married, yeah, they can. Like, I'm telling you, it started out, and this is the weird, it started out as one man. She started dating, okay, that man left, went to prison, so while he was gone, she went and had the baby's name changed to this other man. She knew darn well this wasn't his father. That's what it was. Turn around and found out who the real father was and is going through some stuff trying to get her name changed. It was a mess. And she's coming to me because I like legalities. I like the law. I like to know like what's by law and what's, So a lot of people might come up to me and be like, well, what can I do with this, and that? Sometimes I don't even know the answer to it. But this one I had done some research for her about it. And that's what it was. She was going to have to go through, because she already changed the baby's name once. Now she's going to have to go to this other man, and she's going to have to get him to sign to have the baby's name changed to this other man. Men don't like that. Men are very, very territorial. And when a man gets attached to a child, and you give them the right to do, they're not going to do that. So then guess what you're going to have to do? Paternity test anyways. You're going to have to do paternity test. Had she been married, it would have been a different story. Had she been married, she wouldn't have been able to change. She wouldn't have been able to change that baby's name at all. She would have had to have her husband, what's the word I'm looking for? Sign over his rights. That's what it is. Girls bring time. What? Girls bring time for that. Boys don't bring the time for this conversation. You mean don't make the time? Girls make time for that. Boys don't make the time for this conversation as much. They don't. You know what, Brian Sports? I think it's a man thing. Men don't tend to fight for themselves as much as I think they should. Sometimes men are just like, man, whatever. Men are on this. They love to be known for taking care of somebody. I know somebody who has a whole bunch of kids, and they just love to have a whole bunch of kids. Why would you have that many kids? Like, this person had like 30 kids. When do you stop? But people like, especially men. I think women have a lot of kids for different reasons than men have a lot of kids. Remember, I just said that men like their name to go. Like, it's just like kings. They give you a last name. You can king this, and then king this the third, and this then the fourth, and this. So they want their name to spread. Women don't really benefit from, unless you're going to use your kids as, slaves or maids in the house. Then of course you might have a whole bunch of kids. But I definitely think that if it's not mandatory, I think it's going to be too costly. And unnecessary to make DNA testing mandatory at birth, you're just gonna run into hey there, Mr. Williams. You're just gonna run into too much cost, and you're gonna run into too much unnecessary testing. There's no point of testing a married couple for a baby unless they have an intention to change the person's name on the birth certificate. And then I think that's even through divorce, if I was reading that correctly. You know, you can't just, and so and you know how many married people are in the world? I mean, I know that the divorce rate is definitely skyrocketing, but I mean, that's just from this year. She said they just want their sperm to spread. They be wanting that name to keep going. But you know what? And my husband says that's why if a wife gets pregnant from another man while she's married, the marriage is over. Yeah, most of the time. But there are some marriages that don't divorce from that. They don't divorce from it. Women want something to care for. That's true. That's true. But you have some women that have like 10 kids, and you be like, didn't you have enough to care for after like 2 or 3? You're having so many kids. My gosh, I can only imagine. And then there was that show but they were married, the Duggars or something like that, where they had like 16 or 17 kids. I couldn't stand it when she had to say, we're adding one more. Oh my gosh, I think she's up to 19 now. Stop. But I think that has to do with their religious stuff and what they believe and what they don't believe. But I think that we're not giving enough opportunity. I think that we could cure some issues with a lot of men that don't know children exist for them. I also think that if we did start mandatory testing, we would also see a huge increase in the child support problem. Because just because a man has a baby doesn't mean he can pay for a baby. And I think that's definitely something that people who are trying to get pregnant need to think of. But I'm trying to tell you, and I'm not even trying to be funny, but when that stuff's feeling good, ain't nobody thinking about that. You ain't thinking about that. And you pay for it later. But you know, so I do think that the option should be there. The option should be there to be like, well, I want to get tested, or I don't want to get tested, or I want my baby to be tested, or I want their DNA to be in the system. I will say that it may benefit if they do want to, not just for paternity testing, but if they just want their baby to be, if they just want their baby's DNA to be in the system, just in case, you know, maybe they get kidnapped, or, you know, maybe if they grow up and become criminals, we'll already have them. You know, maybe their child grows up and becomes a rapist, and, you know, look how many unsolved cases that we have where men have raped a bunch of women and they don't have the DNA for them. So, you know, if it's already in the system, then, you know, it can eliminate. So maybe that's something positive that could come out of mandating DNA testing, you know, not just paternity, but the actual just having the DNA in the system. I mean, I can understand that. Really? See, it's very difficult for men that are put on child support. There's men that their child is my age or me, and they're still on child support because they pay, you know, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yes. Yeah. So you spelled it right. You spelled it right. So it's really frustrating to have to deal with that, because I can only imagine what men have to go through whenever they what they have to go through whenever they find out later on that a child does not belong to them. That is the crazy stuff. Hold on just a second. When a man, it's not even just the men that, they get put on child support or whatever, and then, their child is 5 years old. It's the ones that have actually been raising a child for like 18 years, put in all of this money, and then poof, they realize this child wasn't even mine. I took care of this child the whole time, and it wasn't even mine. There's a man, and this, I think I've printed this out because I was going to cover this on a live. There's a man that he knew a child wasn't his, and he paid all this money all through her life, like all the way up. And she finally got married, and her real dad came back into her life, and she was like, oh, well, I want my dad to walk me down the aisle. Now, this man had already, paid out $12,000 for her wedding. And now she wants this man to walk, her biological father, who she hasn't seen for 20 years. She wants him to walk her down the aisle. And he's not even paying. He's not paying for anything. Monetarily speaking, I understand where he's coming from, but you'll have situations like that. Or you'll have situations where a man thinks that a child is his and goes through life paying for him, taking care of him. And then because anytime a woman has a baby and she's not married, the child is legally put in as the mom, as the guardian, legally, period. Doesn't matter. She's a legal guardian. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what a man says. Doesn't matter none of that. So you go to the court and y'all joint custody or do timeshare, and the woman is that's it. So she'll go through, and have all these men thinking, well, this baby belongs to you, or this baby belongs to you. Or you'll have some men thinking that a whole bunch of men, she'll be telling like 3 or 4 different men that the baby's theirs just so she can get money from them. That's a common issue. That's a big problem. You run into those kind of issues. You run into those kind of problems. So I think that when I asked the question, what problems could testing DNA at birth create? It can create a lot of unnecessary situations. I mean, it can create a need for storage that we just don't have, a need for money that people don't need to pay for that. People don't, if you're married and that, your husband has accepted the fact that, you have got pregnant by another man, which is unacceptable, by the way. So don't think that's cute at all. It's not. But if he's accepted it and you're like, look, I'm going to raise the child as my own, we won't stay married, we won't do it, whatever. If he decides that, great. If he does, then I don't necessarily think of DNA. I think that's an unnecessary DNA test. That's one unnecessary. So like I said, I think that the option to test should be readily available to people who have children, but it shouldn't be forced on them. It shouldn't be forced. And I also don't think that, and I'm saying think because this is my opinion. I also don't think that a man should have to pay for time that he didn't know was his. So DNA testing is $500 if you go through, oh gosh, what's this place called? It's not CDC. It's, hey, what is it called? It's a DNA testing site. It's $500 if you go through that. And that's the only one. See, the thing is, these girls, or these men, they'll go to Walgreens and they'll pick up a DNA test and then they'll send it to this little lab. And then that lab will come back. They'll send them a little paper. It'll say, this person is the father, this person is not the father, whatever, whatnot. But that is not admissible in court. You can pay $60 all you want to. You'll know. It's not saying that the lab is wrong, but the courts do not accept. I want to say it's like DNC or I don't remember what it's called, but the courts don't accept that test as admissible in court. They won't accept it. They will make you go get an actual paternity test. They're not going to accept that. You can't too deep because I can go that. Huh? You can't. What's that mean? What does that mean? So that's the sad part about it is that whereas you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, nowadays you just can't. You don't know what the situation is. You don't know if, you don't know why people can't do what they do. But if they're going to, I'm scared to touch anything. Last time it hung up on me. Remember, I'm scared to touch the thing. You can go too deep because I can go. That doesn't make any sense. I don't understand that. So look, just to kind of like recap what we talked about. We haven't really come to a conclusion whether it really should or shouldn't be mandatory. It's just a lot of things that go into it. Cost effectiveness. I think that, me personally, that the option should be available to anybody who wants to do that at birth. It should be something that's there. If they do make it mandatory, there's going to be a lot of married people who don't need that test, don't want that test, and you're going to force them to take that test. What they'll do with that test after it's taken, are they going to store it? Are they going to put it in CODIS? Are they going to, where are they going to put, what are they going to do with it? So it goes into a lot. Love you too. It goes into a lot of different things. So determining whether it's actually beneficial for us to make DNA testing mandatory, it's still up in the air. It seems like we have a lot of people who, yes, they really want it to be a mandatory, and others that's not. Brian Port says it's really hard right now. It's hard in this day and age to get a trustworthy woman that got some good. I'm not reading that out loud. Take care of the house and be smart. It's true. We can have that whole conversation all day long. It's very hard to find trustworthy people, trustworthy women, trustworthy men, anybody. So we really have to be careful of the people that we are getting involved in and associating ourselves with. So look, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. It looks like our question is still up in the air. If you have not done so already, I do want to go ahead and remind you to subscribe to this channel. Make sure you go over to YouTube. If you're already on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button. And make sure that you select the notification bell and select all so that you get the notifications. Also, you want to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You also want to make sure that you like this video, comment on this video if you want to, and share this video with family and friends who may want to see our point of views that we brought out tonight about DNA testing. DNA testing doesn't necessarily mean paternity testing, even though that is really what brought that conversation up into the world in the first place. So with that being said, y'all, we're going to go ahead and call it a night, and we're going to catch y'all on the flip side. to remind everybody, yeah. Yes.